So our guest tonight brings a wealth of experience to us. She has, she's another lawyer. If you've been to any of our events, they've all had something to do with being a lawyer, which is very interesting to us. But beyond being a lawyer, she's the founder of 3 different businesses. She's been a TEDx speaker. She's been represented in several publications, including Harvard University's entrepreneurial program. She's a mom, a wife, and when I talked to her about coming out to be our guest, and I told her what Startup Grind was about, it was empowering the community. She was like, really? Community involvement, empowering the community? I'm all in. And so that was exciting by itself, and I'm glad to welcome, please join me in welcoming Anjali Patel, our guest tonight. And if I missed any announcements, I'll come back to them. So I have one question I have to start with. Okay. It's for my daughter. So do you like Nestle Crunch Bars?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But can I add a caveat? As being a lawyer, there's always a caveat. The skinny ones. The long, skinny ones. Because they taste a little different than the miniature ones.
They do.
So I will say yes with that caveat.
We'll have to do a study and see how that goes. No, that's awesome. So I'd like to start with the same place I start with everybody, which is just to find out a little bit about who you are, where you came from, where you grew up, what's your educational background before getting into business, and then leading us into what got you started in the business world.
Sure. So I was born in 1970-something in Cleveland, born and raised, and I have 2 siblings, an older brother and a younger sister, and my parents had immigrated from India, and when they came with this very strong work ethic, and that's what I saw growing up. I just saw lots of hard work and very little excuses. So when they were raising us, I would say I was a good student for a little bit, and then I hit like 7th grade and started plummeting.
Wow, sounds like me.
So, I kind of went through this identity crisis, all teenagers do, and tried to figure out who I was, and I'm still trying to figure out who I am today. But grew up, and I was always really interested in creating things, and I fell into storytelling and story selling, as my parents would label me. Like, what story are you selling me today? So I always had this urge to just make something. And when I graduated high school, I was getting ready to figure out what do I want to do. And I remember my dad said to me, and this might be a little bit of a stereotype, but this happens to be true in my family. My parents said to me, here's your options. You can either be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or be whatever you want to be, but you need to sell me on it. And, and I said, you know what, I actually really like arguing. So let me try to get into law school. So that's what I did, and I had a very supportive family, and they helped me all along the way. Went to law school, graduated, moved to Chicago, worked at a large law firm for several years, and then came out to DC. And I've been practicing law for about 20 years now. And as much as I like it, I always put an asterisk next to it, because I like practicing law, but it's not the be-all, end-all for me. I've always had this itch to scratch the surface of things. I'm always looking at stuff, and my husband's always like, oh no, here we go again. Like, I'll be sitting there at a restaurant, and I'm like, And, I've had a lot of ideas that have tanked. But every once in a while, you have an idea and it sticks. And so I'm always kind of going at that. And let's see, I met my husband about 11, 12 years ago, and he was in the military. And I think that's a common thread.
It was also a common thread, yeah.
And being a military wife taught me resilience, and it taught me to look at things with a fresh pair of eyes, always, because we had to do that. We were constantly moving around, and while we were moving around, we were growing our family, and I learned the sense of community through being in the military community. The sense of community you find in the military is unparalleled. It was so quick. I grew, spent a lot of time in DC, and I didn't even know who my neighbor was for about 2 years. Never said hello. I have no idea, who they were. And then when we were married, we moved to North Carolina, and we were on a military base. And the moving truck was still in the driveway. And someone started coming up to the door saying, "Hey, do you need help watching your kids?" And I'm like, is this real? And I quickly realized, yes, it is, because there's such a strong sense of community. We're all here for each other. So I would attribute my current desire to kind of make an impact in communities stemmed from my exposure to military life. And it's just, you won't see anything like it, how people just reach out and help each other out, and they know, you know what, our time is limited, so let's not waste it. You might be gone tomorrow, you might be shuffled off somewhere else, so I'm not gonna waste time, I'm not gonna BS, I'm not gonna do 3 years of ice breaking. If you wanna come over, come over. And I still carry that with me now, and I try to do that wherever I'm at.
I love it. Well, and that's part of, honestly, you and I spoke before the event tonight, what one of the driving factors for this community is that sense of community. When you transition from that military family, it's all of a sudden missing.
Yes, it is.
And so that kind of drives this whole experience for me, and trying to facilitate that in our business communities, where I'm working on taking this whole experience. So that's awesome. And so you sound like a lot like Mark, who was our first guest, with regards to constantly scanning the environment for problems that need to be solved. And you said it might not always work out, but
yeah.
So let's talk then a little bit about, so what led you to not only identifying the problem, but moving into the next phase, which is trying to help solve that first problem?
I think that trying to find the problem is sort of, for me, innate. Moving on to the next step, that's where the challenge lies. I feel, if you ask someone in my family, they're like, "Yeah, you're really good at finding problems." Constantly finding there's something wrong with the water leaking, you need to fix that. That's, I think, easy to do. It's easy to spot a problem. What's challenging, and what I still, feel challenged with at times is, okay, you find a problem, what are you going to do about it, if anything? And if you start making progress towards a solution, what happens when you hit these obstacles? Because you will hit the obstacles. So to answer that question, it's a work in progress for me. Can I find a problem? Oftentimes, yes. Can I get to the solution? It really depends. It's always moving. And what I have learned is that you can't do these things on your own. You always need somebody. There's always someone out there who, either a mentor or a partner, or even just someone to just give you general education. No matter what it is, it's always going to be easier solved if you have other people's input in it in some capacity.
So, what was the first business that you?
So the first business that I started when we were living in North Carolina, we were on a military base, and we were probably the only Indian family for many, many miles. And I met a lot of really nice moms, and they would come over and be like, "Hey, what are you making? What is that? What's this spice? What's that spice?" And a lot of times at that time, my kids were all 3 kids were 3 and under. So when someone rang the doorbell at 8:30, I'm like, "No!" I knew everyone was going to start waking up. So, and as much as I loved having people come in and out, I said, this is such a, it's like a landmine, if someone rings the doorbell at the wrong time, like, these kids are gonna wake up. So I said, you know what, let me just put all this stuff online. I'm gonna put these recipes online for you guys. And I'll just, I'll go on GoDaddy or somewhere, and I'll just build like a basic site, because I had enough people who were interested, but didn't have access to these ingredients, and saying, you know what, I'm interested in this food. I wanna learn about the culture, but I don't know where to get this stuff. So I started putting recipes up online, and then I started pre-measuring spice packets, because that's where the flavor is for a lot of this food. And I would say, hey, if this is what you want to make, come on over and I'll give you these spice packets. Because of the area we were in, this doesn't sound like a novel concept here, there's so much out here,
Sure.
but in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, there really wasn't that much out there. So a local newspaper caught wind of this, because enough of the moms were coming over to grab these recipes. And they said, can we come over to your house? We're going to interview you. I said, yeah, sure, you know. And at that time, it wasn't a business, but it became one because it hit the local newspaper. And I think that it was, the headline said something to the effect of, you know, local mom giving out, you know, free recipes or, you know, something along those lines. So I started getting inundated with requests for these Indian recipes. And at first I was like, well, this is awesome. I'm gonna, you know, if it's not someone I know, I'm gonna start charging them and I'll mail them these recipes and these spices. And the first order that we got, I thought, okay, this is amazing. It's exhilarating when someone actually wants to be part of something that you started. However, quickly, you know, one ding turned to 10 to 20 to 50, and I realized I did not have the capacity to keep up with the demand.
And you had children under 3.
Yeah. So 3 kids, 3 and under, and I remember, you know, my husband being like, okay, you know, I trust you, but I see a storm coming up ahead. And the demand, you always think as a business person, demand's a good thing, and it is if you know what you're doing. But if you don't, then it can be your downfall. And that is when I learned that having help, having someone who knows something that you don't is crucial. The
huge.
demand just overtook me, and the stress level, the anxiety, I couldn't keep up, and I was so worried. I'm like, if I get one bad customer review, this whole thing goes under. And essentially that is what happened. I just couldn't keep up.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I think that's my phone and my kids texting me right now. It's
all right.
I forgot to turn the ringer off. So, you know, I learned, you know what, you need help. You need assistance. You need guidance. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean you have all the answers all the time. And that's what that taught me. And that failure taught me how to get up. I will. I have a very involved family over there, so I'm sorry about that. So that's what that kind of taught me. The failure taught me how to stand back up again, because you know, to be honest with you, when you go out there, you put your name and your face out there, and you're saying, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." People start asking you, "Hey, how's it going?" And then, you know, at first you're like, "Hey, it's going great," and then a month later, "Hey, how's it going?"
Not so great.
And you're like, "Oh, you know, it just didn't work out." And some people feel bad, and others are like, "Yeah, I told you so," you know. And so you have to learn how to get back up from that, because a part of me just wanted to bury myself and say, I'm never going to try anything again. I'm never taking another risk again. So learning how to get up from that was something that took me some time, but it has been invaluable to me.
So you talked a little bit about resiliency, and I don't want to get off track on the resiliency perspective, but that ties right in.
Yes.
So that whole ability to figure out how to be resilient, and I would say that's a huge learning lesson, or huge lesson learned, being able to get back up. So what did you do next as far as getting back up? What did that process look like for you, and how did you move on to the next thing?
You know, I think that for me, it was took a little bit of time, and I had to just eventually look at myself in the mirror and say, you know what? You do not need to live down to anyone's expectations anymore. You know innately that, like, you want to start doing something new. You know you want to create. So you just have to start blocking out all the no's and the naysayers. And I'm not going to be living my life through someone else's lens. And it did take some time, but like I said, you know, I have a supportive husband who's like, you know, always like, go, go, go. And, you know, at the time, this, I'm guessing, will change when my kids are teens, but, you know, right now they're like, hey, you know, you're so cool, Mom. And I'm like, yeah, I am cool. And so I kind of fed off that energy that I was getting in my house, and you just do it. You just get up and say, I'm going to start something else. I'm going to try again. And if I fall again, then I'll get up again. There's that saying, I think it's like, I've seen it written many times. It might have originated in Japan, where it says, you know, fall down 99 times, get up 100. That's how you should live your life.
That's pretty good. I like that. So then what did the next, well, I'm going to say adventure. I know it's not always an adventure, but what did that next component look like for you? So you started figuring out that you needed to move forward, you needed to get into something else besides just being, you were actively practicing as a lawyer at that
Yes,
time as well?
Yes,
Okay.
I was, and just dabbling in it. We, while we were on base, there was, more than one occasion where a family would not necessarily know their rights. They would be in a rental agreement, living, in an apartment, saying, "Hey, we're PCSing somewhere else, and my landlord's coming after me," and I would just be like, "No, you don't have to put up with this. Like, if you're PCSing, you walk out free and clear. You don't have to don't listen to someone trying to harass you for money." So those type of everyday legal things that were happening near the base is kind of how I kept active. It kept my brain going, and it was a way for me to help my friends who had helped me so many times with so many different things. So I kept on practicing law, but for me, there was always something else on the horizon. It's just this itch to do something else. And nowadays, when people ask me, are you practicing? I go, I think being a lawyer is a little bit of a mindset. It's how you see things. It's how you analyze things. And my husband will tell you that I litigate at home like all the time. So constantly,
I have a 17-year-old daughter. I think it's like litigation there too.
Yeah, and I think like a lawyer, if my kids are asking me something, I write it down, sign this contract that says you're going to clean your room, and here's the consequences. So
how do we do that exactly?
Yeah, it works sometimes better than others,
okay.
but
okay. So some failures there too.
Failures there too.
I was hoping.
So I think that the being a lawyer stays with me, but that's
okay.
never prevented me from delving into anything new. And a lot of the law that I practice, we're helping other entrepreneurs. So it would always feed that juice, of you see all these creative people around you.
And that doesn't stifle any creativity at all.
Yeah, it's just, you see like the genius that so many people have, the ideas that they come up with, that it just fuels you to keep on going.
That's awesome. So the next adventure. What did that look like, and how did you get started there? Tell us about that.
So the next adventure that where I'm currently still on is I just having kids of my own, watching kids and being around a lot of kids, started seeing a gap that not every family, as we know, is similarly situated. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have a supportive family and neighbors, and even when you have that, it's hard growing up now with social media and just you're constantly being bombarded and judged. And there are so many kids out there, teenagers out there who are at risk, and they don't have someone who's always home to give them that support. As much as they want to be there for their kids, they're trying to make ends meet. And what happens to these kids who don't have someone who's prodding them along every step of the way? Like, what happens when they fall through the cracks? How do we get them out of there? How do we teach them that, you are something, you are someone, you're not an imposter, you're a real person with real success stories? How do we communicate that to them? So I really became interested in we need to try to help our future, which is, today's youth. And initially, I kind of went the traditional mentoring model. Let's see what we can do. And what I came across is that a lot of the teens in particular, we'd have these sessions and, just trying to talk back and forth. I'm trying to kind of form a artificial community through these meets. But the teens would not always open up, They would come in like, hey, how's your day? It's fine. Yes, checking. And they leave, and, a lot of adults would be like, I'm not even sure who that was.
Wow.
They didn't tell me what their name was. So I, came home and thinking, all right, I have the best of intentions, but this isn't working. What can I do to help these kids open up? Because I know that once they open up, they will see their own worth and others will see their worth. So ultimately what we ended up doing is we use video games as our tool to get the teens to open up. And we have them mentor the adults because myself included on many of these games, we're clueless compared to the younger generation.
First to admit that I'm not a gamer, and I would be challenged to learn a new game right now.
Yeah, and so right now, video games, it's a huge thing, and I think that a lot of people in my generation as well, we look at video games sometimes through the wrong lens, like, oh, it's a waste of time, my kids are wasting time, that's all they do.
Always on it.
Always on it. but there is more than one way to look at it. And what I tell my friends who are parents is, just like there's good TV shows and bad TV shows, there's good video games and there's bad video games. And what you hear about on the media is what's attention worthy, and those, for the most part, are bad video games.
Sure.
You're not going to hear a news story about someone who played Minecraft and then joined their robotics team and got a scholarship out of it. That's not newsworthy, and so what I have to do now is I try to educate the adults and say, I'm not saying unfettered access. I'm not advocating that these kids play video games 24 hours a day. What I'm saying is let them teach you how to play so you know what you're saying no to, first of all. And secondly, once you see what they're playing, and the games that we play are all nonviolent video games, then you might be inclined to want to sit with them and play with them and connect with them. And with my own kids, them being a little bit younger, you see, when you're playing with them, hey, how was your day? Fine, turns into, how was your day? Oh, I forgot to tell you, I went on the field trip and, Andy didn't want to sit with me on the bus, but then we worked it out, in detail. That wasn't there before.
Yeah.
Kids want to feel that they have commonalities, not that they're being spoken down to, but just having an equal conversation. When we have these teenagers who teach the adults, it's an automatic icebreaker, because a lot of the teens are like, oh, you don't even know what an Xbox is? Are you kidding me? Okay, sit down, let me tell you how to do this. And, they start opening up. And by the end, they're like, hey, you know what? I just taught someone how to play. I feel good because I taught someone. And so that's currently what we're working on, how we're trying to foster a sense of community.
And so, well, first of all, I think it's huge as a parent, that opportunity to connect with your children in a way that they can relate to very easily is big time. But that time and that connection is a big, coming from the military community, the resiliency component. When we start talking about families, we start talking about how we can engage people, whether it's our family or other people, and have a successful conversation or relationship with them. And that's one of the things that we talk about, is how to get connected. So I think it's huge by itself. But now we're not talking about just any games. You already talked about not bad games, not good games. Well, not bad games, but good games. And now you're using a specific set of games, right? Yeah.
So what we deal with right now primarily is we did some smaller focus groups trying to figure out what can we do, what can we play. Anything that's violence, automatically off the table. It's not something that I personally advocate, and I can't stand behind something that I'm opposed to. So we focused on NBA 2K. And the reason we focused on that game is, most people, at least know what basketball is. They've gone to a game in person. And secondly, the NBA now has, I don't know if you guys know, they have their own video game league that started about a year ago. So
I had no idea.
They draft people, gamers, and Cleveland has a team, the Wizards have their own team, Atlanta, Dallas, so they compete. And it's under the NBA umbrella. And what that means is that there's validity being thrown at these games. And with validity comes money in the form of scholarships and education. And so at last count, there was over 200 colleges offering video game scholarships.
Wow.
And every time you check, it's higher. If you check tomorrow morning, it'll be higher than what I just said right now. It's exploding. And this is a way to get an education. And when you see tutoring sites that normally tutor you for SAT, ACT, that are now offering you video game tutoring, that's when it's time to wake up. And this isn't the same time frame that I grew up in. When I was growing up, this wasn't a thing, but it is now. And we need to be aware of it. And instead of running from current trends, we need to understand them and embrace them and figure out how are we going to integrate these current trends into our lifestyle. Esports, they're not going anywhere. There are huge arenas opening up all over the country. And this is what kids do. If you go and ask kids, I mean, a lot of them haven't turned a TV on in forever, unless they're like hooking it up to their gaming console. but yet they'll go on YouTube and watch someone play video games rather than watch a movie. So,
Yes, they will. And I still don't understand that, but I think I'm starting to get a little bit different picture just from this
Yeah.
conversation. It's interesting, and it really goes back to mentorship. That's where this all started, right? And so, who were you? What led you to that discovery of I really want to mentor these children or these teenagers? What led you to that to begin with?
I think that maybe a part of it is, I always think that could have been me. That could have been my kids. It could have been any one of us. And we're fortunate that it wasn't, but I'm not going to, hang my hat up on that and be like, oh, well, I'm lucky that that wasn't me. That easily could have been any one of us. And even teens who do have these, have the grace of having so many loving people around them, it is still extremely difficult to be a teenager in this day and age. So any support that they can get from anyone is always valuable. And a lot of times getting support from someone who's not your parent means a lot, because you hear, if your own mom is saying, hey, you're such a great kid. I mean, I've heard my mom say that. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
But when someone that you don't know as well says, hey, you're pretty cool, that resonates with you. And I think that any teenager can use that, but in particular, those teenagers that don't have the advantages of having a bunch of people around them to constantly lift them up, they can use it more than anybody. And the amount of creativity that you see in these groups of kids, it's amazing, and it's untapped potential. And I think that if we want to focus on our collective future, we can't ignore this gigantic population of people who are so talented and so bright.
That's interesting. I mean, that's really fascinating. I saw the eSports thing, and I saw the mentorship piece stuck out to me, and your background having provided mentorship-like services with entrepreneurs through your legal experience. All of that tied in really well with the whole mentorship component. So I like talking about mentorship, because one of the things I personally have experienced is it's hard to find a good mentor.
It is.
It's very difficult to find a good mentor, and some of those conversations turn into they really just want your money. And that, to me, is not a mentorship relationship.
No.
It shouldn't be about money. You either want to give back and help somebody, or you just want to go make money. So how hard was it for you to find good mentors? So you experienced failure from the beginning through the lack of additional support. We'll call that mentorship. We'll call it other leadership or engagement to help you, whatever that looks like. So what did you do, and how did that process go for you to find a mentor that you could work with?
To find a mentor, now that's like, it's been a full ride for me, because it can be challenging to find the right mentor. And there's, like you pointed to, a lot of times we're like, okay, this is going great. And they're like, and now it's just $5.99 for the rest of my advice. And it's inorganic. And I think that the one thing to focus on is find that some common ground. I don't care who it is, where you're looking. It can either be because the common ground is, hey, we're both local to this community, or it can be do some research on, if you have a particular group of people in mind. Hey, we both went to this school, or we both have kids, or we both, love the Cleveland Cavaliers even though they're terrible, or whatever it is. Find some common ground. But what I initially did was I started just shooting off emails. But they were generic and they were bland. And I think that coming from someone who might be your mentor, they also have full plates. So they want to know, I'm not looking for money per se if I'm going to be your mentor, but what's in it for me? And one of the people who I consider a mentor now, he remarked once, he said, I probably get hundreds of emails every day saying, can I have 15 minutes of your time? I don't even look at those. And, his suggestion was, and this is somewhat similar to what I did research on this particular guy, and I, really kind of did a deep dive. And when I did contact him, I said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. This is what we have in common. Put something catchy. I mean, it might not work, but oftentimes it does. You can't just necessarily put 15 minutes of your time, because a lot of these mentors say, we see this all the time. What can you do that's different? Be yourself. Be genuine. And why do you want this person as your mentor? And just really get into what those whys are. The person who I consider a mentor now said to me, well, maybe you can, the type of people I respond to have something to offer in return. You know, they know that I like the Atlanta Hawks, so they might say, you know, give me some cool facts or something that makes me bite, because they are people too with families and businesses to run. So I think a lot of times we'll kind of not vilify them, the people who rejected us, but kind of be like, well, they don't care, you know, they just want money. And that sometimes is true, but oftentimes they just want a connection like we do. And if we can just find, yes, the onus would be on us.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to help find this connection between you and I. I know you're busy. I know you run multiple businesses. I know you do this and that. But here's a connection I found between us. I did the work. Now let's start an organic conversation. It took me a long time because I did. I mean, I remember sitting in North Carolina this one day, I probably sent out like 70 emails in 10 minutes. So if you can send out 70 emails in 10 minutes, you're not doing a good job of sending them out.
Not trying to build a good connection, right?
Right, so I think that would be my way of trying to just be human, be yourself. And over the years, I have stopped kind of trying to put on false pretenses for people. I think, you know, in my 20s, you know, I'm going somewhere, I'm trying to meet someone who I'm like, this would be a great mentor. Let me put on my fanciest like suit that I have, even though I'm so uncomfortable. And let me, you know, act a certain way. And then as the decades go on, I think you just realize who you are. And I think to me that has been a key to my success has been, you know, I'm going to stay true to who I am. My life is messy, you know, I have kids, my phone's ringing, you know, I forgot to turn my ringer off. And it's just what it is. And I think when people see some authenticity, a lot of people might not like who you are, but the couple people who do, they'll stick with you.
No, I think it's fascinating because you started off talking about storytelling and selling stories, and the number one component there is being authentic, I think. Revelation of mine recently, so I won't get into it, but that it ties together so well. And so it sounds like you started off trying to sell a story that wasn't really representative of who you are, and you've progressed into being able to share a story of who you are and not having to sell it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, for me it took some time. You know, I think over the years you just become maybe more comfortable in your skin. In my 20s, I'm like, who do you want me to be? Like, you tell me who you want me to be, and I'll be back in 10 minutes looking, acting exactly what you want. And then in my 30s, it was like, okay, you know, I don't know, maybe I'll do that sometimes. In your 40s, I'm like, you know, I don't have the energy to do this. So
I'm with you.
So you just kind of, you know, be you. And when in my business interactions, you know, at home, I can be sarcastic. I can be very wordy, and I just kind of stay true to that. And you know, if my kids are, I ask my kids at times, hey, you know, I'm on a call, so if you could please keep your voice down. It doesn't always work out. So instead of trying to buffer it, like, I'm so sorry about that outside noise, I'm like, listen, my kids are at each other's throats. I apologize. Just give me about 30 seconds to try to do some damage control. And again, like, some people they're like, that's not my cup of tea. But I think that the connections I have now are genuine and they're real, and they're connections that I can trust in the long run. And right now at this phase in my life, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. So, jumping around a little bit, going back to Seeing Eye to Eye is the name of the company, right? That's providing mentorship and youth empowerment is really what you're talking about. Because it's not just funding for college. We're talking about some of them have access to real jobs through these programs, right? What's the capacity at right now? What is your vision for that moving forward? And I want to make sure, before we run out of time, we touch a little bit about that balance, because you're still practicing law. You're running this I'm going to call it a mentorship program, because it's really what it sounds like. And you're managing a family at home as well.
So I'll touch on, I guess, the work balance thing first, and then I'll get into the details of what we're... You know, everyone talks about this work-life balance, and I don't know, it's bullshit. Sorry.
Oh, you're
That's
good.
Not acceptable language.
That's our
I
life.
don't think this exists. You know, I think I was after this elusive work-life balance for so long, and I'm realizing like I don't think it exists. There's good days and bad days. There's days where I'm like, you know what, I was a great mom today. But I was horrible at everything else. And days where I'm out of town, I'm traveling for work, and I'm like, you know, I wasn't there. I missed my kid's basketball game. I wasn't the best mom today. But you know what? I kicked some butt, like doing what I'm doing. And now how I try to look at it is I look at the composite. You know, when I look back at my life lived, was I able to hit the things that I care about, that I'm passionate about? Can I do it every day? I haven't done it once, you know. I've never been successful of having a truly balanced day. Okay. Always something that I go to sleep thinking, didn't really get to that. But my goal now is I just want my life lived to be balanced, not my days. In terms of specifically what we're doing with our program, the capacity of what we can handle, we do on-site meets where that person-to-person interaction can help with the mentorships. And our capacity depends on the space, but usually we can handle up to about 200.
Wow.
What we're also trying to do is, in addition to the mentorship, is these people who are realizing, you know what, I'm good at science. What I'm learning in these video games, that is science, or it is technology. It is. I'm learning, you know, mechanics here. I'm learning different pieces of science by this game. I'm learning strategy. What we try to do for these teens is we're like, okay, we're going to try to set you up with employers who keep on saying we're interested in hiring this, you know, more teenagers, more females. And what we're doing is we have built a platform where you can upload your story, not just your grades, your story. This is my grades. This is what I'm interested in doing. And you know what? Here's some of my favorite songs too. And I'm going to tell you why I think my brother's annoying too. This is my story. And this is who I am, and the employers get to look at it. So it's not just the teens looking for an apprenticeship or an internship. It's the employers get to do the work too. You guys are benefiting too. You're not doing these teenagers a favor by offering them an internship. You're also benefiting. So you can also look for them. So on the platform, on social media, we have about 25,000 people on there right now. And we are working on getting the employers matched up, and it's their learn to earn positions where the teen might come in, you know, as an 11th grader and say, I don't know anything about this, but I'm going to learn this summer.
Yeah.
And those are the types of positions right now that we're trying to hook these teens up with.
And what, is there a specific category or categories, fields that are most of them are aligning with?
Right now, in the Dallas area, there's a lot of eSports arenas popping up. A lot of tech companies. Dallas has become pretty tech heavy. So we've definitely seen a lot of interest from eSports related companies saying, you know what, here is an internship we can give you. And not every eSports job is someone sitting, you know, playing a video game. It's an industry. So like any industry, it needs an entire support universe around it with finance, with lawyers, with researchers, social media, all of those things to put this infrastructure together. So the types of jobs that are being offered are not always, okay, well, we want you to play this video game for 10 hours a day. No one does that. A lot of them are like traditional internships, except they're in an esports industry because that's where the money is. And that's where the opportunity lies for a lot of these kids.
So if people are looking for someone that has the technical ability or the ability to adapt in the technical world, that's an opportunity for us to have a conversation. Is that really what we're talking about here?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's fascinating to me because I'm sure that creates opportunity. It created some opportunities in my mind. I hope that some of us have heard that too. But so that's good. There was one other question that popped up, and I don't want to miss it. Oh, so what can people do? I know I personally like to take time when I can, and I do mentorship for other veterans. But if someone were interested in getting involved in providing some mentorship or receiving mentorship from teenagers even, how might they get involved in that?
Well, they can, if you're here, you can come and talk to me directly, or you can go onto our website and just drop us a line saying, hey, right now our in-person meets are in DC and Dallas. So those are our live locations right now. So anyone who's interested in mentoring or being mentored, or we've had parents come in who said, I don't really know anyone here. Is it okay that I'm here because I just want to learn how to play? So like I want my kid to like not know that I know, and then I want to go play with them. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter why you're here,
That's pretty cool.
And a lot of the parents just like, hey, I do want to help my community, but on a more selfish level, I want that connection with my kids. And I always say, I don't think there's anything selfish about that. You're here, you're now part of a group event, and what you do with that knowledge, it's not limited to this specific sphere. You can take it anywhere. And if your goal is to connect with your child, there's nothing selfish about that. And if this is how you want to do it, breaking those walls down. I think a lot of times with teenagers in particular, it's like this, you don't understand me, and
Yeah, definitely. So daughters, and I get that on occasion.
so to be able to go in and be like, actually, I got this, it can go a long way. So
Well, I think that's extremely valuable. So you talked about the meetups, and you talked about Dallas. Is there a meetup here in the area?
yeah, so our next meetup in DC is not scheduled till the end of February. So if there's anyone interested here, come talk to me, and I will give you all the details.
I might be interested. Because it just sounds cool and a good way to connect with. I think I see value in it for two adults to sit down and figure out how to fumble through that together.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be interesting to me. Okay, what tip, if you could offer one tip to somebody just starting out a business, or even an entrepreneur that's been in business for a while, something that you wanted to share of value, what would it be?
I guess a tip that I kind of use to gauge my own pathway is I will ask myself, would you recommend yourself for whatever the position is, whether it's business, family, would you recommend yourself as a wife? Sometimes I'm like, no, not today, I wouldn't. But
we can edit that out.
But just like, would you recommend yourself? And that's how I can gauge, where I might need to step things up or dial back a little bit. And my answers vary every day, but I think for any entrepreneur starting off or seasoned, it's always a great question, because life is dynamic, it's always moving, and your answer today is only worth that day. Every day is a brand new story, a brand new day, and a brand new opportunity as well.
So would you hire you, and would you fire you? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, and I will tell you honestly, it depends on the day.
That's funny.
And,
I like it.
So that's kind of how I try to grade myself and keep myself in check. And that's where I see where a lot of my deficiencies are. If I'm getting a bad grade, giving myself a bad grade, would I truly recommend myself as a mom today or as a business owner today? If I see that there's consistently I'm not getting good marks, then I know, what, let's try to re-strategize and recalibrate something in my day to make it a little more even.
That's awesome. Well, I think we're coming up on our time, so I do want to open it up to questions here in just a second, but I wanted to go back real quick. So I know that most of your law practice is in real estate, right? But we touched on helping entrepreneurs. What kind of, do you offer services for entrepreneurs now?
Yes, we do. I personally focus on commercial leases, just because that's my niche.
So if somebody's looking for building space and they're not sure
if you
all
help
the...
with a commercial lease, yes, let me know.
That's good to know.
But I try to just kind of stay focused in that particular area, because I am trying to juggle a few different things. That's one area that I'm really, really interested in. So that's usually where I focus. But our law firm helps entrepreneurs with really any business need that they have.
So, so it's just a wide range of services through the firm?
Range, yeah. So
okay, are we allowed to say who the firm is? I don't...
Argent Place.
Argent Place, okay. No, nothing against our partners from Cogent. So, okay, I'm going to open it up to questions before we end our time together. And before we get there, I do want to say thank you, but we'll come back and do a proper thank you in a second.
Sure.
So I think it was good. Anybody have questions? We've got a microphone to pass around because we are videoing. So if you have questions, I'd like you to ask it there. Anybody? Yep, over here.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Just a quick question, informally. Curiosity, aside from the good you intend to accomplish, what's the model to sustain the good? It takes resources, time,
Sure.
people, and money.
That's a great question.
It peaked just a little bit, sorry. So you guys are still starting up, you're looking for sponsors from the NBA, sponsorship as well, but what's the long-term model to sustain?
So that's a great question, and yes, you're right. I think for any business owner, you want to have a positive social impact, but it's business, so you want to be able to have it be a sustainable enterprise. So our way of keeping this afloat, monetizing it, my big thing was I didn't want to be reliant on grants for perpetuity. So our platform where employers sign up and younger youth sign up, it's always free for the youth to join. So anyone who's looking for an opportunity to get involved in STEM, it's always free for them to join. The employers are the ones who pay. We're providing you a valuable resource of all these potential applicants that you have with diverse backgrounds. So the employers are the ones who pay, and that's where we're generating the revenue so that we can kind of keep on pushing the mentoring element of it, because you hit the nail on the head where you could have the best intentions, but once your resources run dry, there's not that much you can do. So that's how we're going to keep this thing afloat.
Do you mind sharing your name and your company? And that was a great question, by the way.
Yeah, so my name is Corin Allen. I'm just my company is the Kimbimbi Academy. It's education based.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great.
very cool. Any other questions? And if you don't mind, just share who you are. And
I'm Doug, and my company is called Hustler. Hustler without the E. So I have a question for you is, so have you ever faced any of the biggest challenges that could, either you have to shut out the business, or, if you get through, you're going to move to the really big stage, and if you fail, what could have you done to change it differently?
Wow, that's a good question. I feel like I'm going to spend probably my whole lifetime trying to answer part of it. I think that failing, one of the businesses that I started up just failed, and I wasn't quite sure how to wrap around it or how to pivot or re-strategize. But currently, we face challenges and failures all the time. I think the hardest thing is when you can taste an investor. They're right there. They're like, all right, we're going to lock this down. We're going to do this big partnership. Our NBA team is on board. And then it's like crickets, like what just happened, And the highs and lows that come with being a business owner, it's like being on a roller coaster, It's like day one, you're like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing. And then you're up here like, this is awesome, and then someone says you suck, and you're like, I'm terrible, and then you're back up, it's this whole, and it just doesn't stop. And we just had this happen, I don't know, about a month ago. We had a very large investor come to us and say, this is a terrific idea, bring this program over to us, I'm gonna get our NBA team, and I'm like, I love basketball. I mean, I could not have been on a higher high. And then, he asked me to send him an email, which I did. And then, that's weird. refresh. Didn't hear back. So I waited, and it's almost like dating, I'm like, what is a proper amount of time to wait before you hit this person up again? And so I did. I looked this up. I said, how long do you, it's been a while since I've been on the dating scene. So I said, what's the appropriate amount of time before you follow up? And online it says 2 days, for dating. So that's what I did. Waited for 2 days and tried to play it cool, like, hey, just, following up, and didn't hear back again. And that's when you hit that desperation, are we breaking up, or were we never dating? Like, what's going on here? And so, ultimately I had to just kind of move on, because I need to focus my energy on something that I can control. And what I'm learning every day is all these things that we can't control. How can you put it in its proper compartment where you learn from it, but you're not stuck on it? Somebody told me once this analogy a while ago, about a parking lot. When you go to the mall, you park your car in the parking lot, but once you park it, you don't take 10 steps and look at it, and then take another step, look at it to make sure it's there. You go into the mall to go do whatever it is that you came there to do, and then you go back to your car. So you need to remember where your car is but you don't just focus on that. You go in to do what you went to do. So in a similar vein, when you have a problem or an obstacle or someone who says they want to work with you and then completely blow you off, remember where you parked that problem, but go in to do what you came to do, which is, I'm trying to grow this. So my focus needs to stay there. Remember what happened so I can learn from that and try to, do things differently in the future. But don't obsess on it. And it's easier said than done, because I still have moments I'm like, whatever happened with that guy? And check my spam every once in a while. Maybe he fell into my spam. But it's always a challenge. And I'm learning every day how to deal with the failure, because I think for every success story that you hear about, and myself included, I'll be like, oh, this amazing thing happened. Well, I don't mention the 99 times I got rejected before that. And so I think that's just part of the journey.
So, all right, thank you so much for your time
Thank you for having
tonight.
me.
Absolutely, it was exciting, and please feel free to join us for some more
Absolutely.
networking, beer, and food, and I think that's all I have.
Thank you.